and see. Mikel Arteta, my lads, will finally deliver. It's in their eyes. How significant are these two fixtures for the manager and for the club's short-term future, would you say?
Well, massive. This could shape or will shape Arteta's future at the club, really. And yeah, certainly short term. And it's one of the biggest games in Arsenal's history. And I was at the Emirates tonight, sort of, watching the press conference, and Arteta, as you would expect, was really upbeat. Just talking about the opportunity that's there for his team, and urging the fans to. Create even better atmosphere than what we saw a few weeks ago with the Real Madrid game, which was without doubt the finest night Arsenal have had at that stadium since they moved in 2006. But a different challenge tomorrow night, an even bigger challenge in many respects, purely because it is the semi-final. So really looking forward to it. Arteta, as you would expect, was extremely upbeat this evening.
Just touch on some of the quotes then, Jason, from Mikel Arteta, who says, "I hoped and dreamed that we could achieve this. The dark days were necessary. You have to learn and you have to go through certain periods," and successive 8th place finishes at the start of his tenure. The progression is clear, but for a club like Arsenal, it can't just be about progression. There has to be something tangible to go with it, doesn't there?
Yeah, and that's the point, isn't it? I mean, obviously Arsenal have done extremely well under Mikel Arteta. There have been some dark days, there were some difficult times at the start. Obviously he won the FA Cup in his first season, but after that it was quite tricky, especially in the league. They've spent a lot of money, they've invested a lot, they've changed the team a lot, they've backed the manager, and there comes a point when you have to deliver. And, it'd be harsh to say if they go out to Paris Saint-Germain he's failed, but there comes a point where they have to go that step closer, and that step to the end to actually win a trophy. We've had 2 and possibly now 3 second place finishes in the Premier League, and it's about potential, but eventually you have to deliver on that. PSG are, I think, the best team in Europe. I think the most exciting team in Europe, but they can be beaten, as Arsenal have proven already this season. It's a different PSG this time, obviously, same season, but they've changed an awful lot since they played in September at the Emirates. And what we saw with Aston Villa, they can be got at, especially in a hostile atmosphere. So I think tomorrow night the key, as Arteta says himself, will be the fans as well. I mean, it's quite interesting. He talks about them bringing their boots, even bringing their shorts, bringing their shirts. It'd be quite a scene if they bring all those bits with them as well. But I think we saw with the Real Madrid game in the quarter-final what they can achieve when the crowd gets behind them and when they're playing at full capacity. And I think they absolutely desperately do need a good lead tomorrow night to take back to Paris next week, because that will be equally hostile, if not more so, and Paris Saint-Germain at home are a very, very dangerous team. But it's an absolutely mouth-watering tie. But as you say, it really does come down to now is the time to deliver for Arsenal and for Arteta, and he's embraced that, to be fair to him. He's understood that, and he's done his rallying cry, and he's embraced that fully.
The Times has a picture, Charlie, of the man who was so integral in the 2 legs against Real Madrid, Declan Rice. What areas of the pitch do you think will be particularly significant in deciding this semi-final?
Well, it'd be great if he could score another free kick, or even 2 like he did the other night against Real Madrid, the other week rather, sorry. But that Thomas Partey suspended, that's going to have an impact on the Arsenal midfield, and of course who they play up front. So Mourinho could be dropping back into midfield. Trossard, who's played the last couple of matches up front and scored as well, he might play there. So Arteta has had to make changes, but the confidence that first free kick gave Rice was just shown by what happened in the next free kick. That's all about self-belief. So if there are free kicks in dangerous areas, there's up to Declan Rice to maybe do it. Arsenal will feel that maybe PSG are slightly weak at corners and free kicks and crosses into the area with Donnarumma. Donnarumma's had some brilliant performances against English clubs, actually this season as well, of course, against Aston Villa and Liverpool. But he has been suspect with some crosses, as he was actually for a couple of the goals when Arsenal beat PSG here in October. Obviously, it's a totally different game now, and both sets of managers were asked about that. And equally, Luis Enrique was interesting. I was in for his press conference tonight and got a little bit tetchy at times. It was done. He was speaking in Spanish via a French translator, and he sort of was moaning at a few of the French journalists for being negative, and because they were asking about the fact that PSG have only won one of their last 4 games. So he was trying to be upbeat and was getting a bit annoyed with some of the questioning, which was quite interesting to watch as well.
What I think is quite interesting, Jason, I don't know whether Mikel Arteta meant it, but it's something you could take into the quotes. You've both referenced the quarter-final against Real Madrid. He says they're a very different opposition to Real Madrid. They are a team that are very well worked with a lot of detail and attention. Now, you could read into that Real Madrid, with this all-star forward line in particular, it was all sort of a bit disjointed and everyone tried to do things off the cuff, whereas Enrique has sort of transformed PSG from that into an actual unit now.
That's exactly the point I was going to make, actually. Yeah, exactly. I mean, Real Madrid at the moment look like what PSG used to look like when they had Mbappe, Neymar and Messi basically doing their own thing. I remember going to games and watching PSG, and you basically had the 8 players behind those 3, and there's a big gap, and then those 3 were staying up front on their own, and it wasn't a team. They were doing their own thing. They were playing individually. Obviously fantastic players, so clearly they won games because of that, but they couldn't go all the way and win the Champions League. But now Luis Enrique has created not just a very exciting team, a complete team in many ways, but a young team who I think, if they don't even go on to win the Champions League this year, will be a real force in the next couple of years. So I think they really are on a very strong upward curve. But he certainly has coached them in a way that is, I think a real good example to how coaches in modern football should be played, with those wingers who take on their defenders, and with that midfield, which I think will be the key tomorrow night. With the absence of Partey, I think Arsenal might struggle to control that PSG midfield. But absolutely, he has done a fabulous job, and PSG themselves as well, in recognising that it needed to change. They couldn't carry down this kind of Galacticos route. What they called it was no more bling bling, basically, and they've ended that now. And they've obviously they've gone down a much more sort of French-based, younger team, exciting team, and he takes a huge amount of credit for doing that.
Just briefly from you, Charlie, Jason's already said that he thinks PSG are the strongest team left of the 4. Where would your tip be for the eventual winners of the competition?
Oh, well, I mean, I agree with Jason on form over the last, this season really. Forgetting the last couple of weeks, PSG are the best team in Europe. But I still think Arsenal have got a chance. I really do. Are they going to win the Champions League in Munich? I'm not so sure. But if they get through to the final, then of course they've got a chance. And I think they might well beat PSG over the 2 legs. But they of course need to win tomorrow, ideally by a couple of goals.
Chaps, thank you very much. We'll take a breather there. Arsenal looking for a trophy. Liverpool already have one in their locker, having wrapped up the Premier League yesterday. We will talk about that in detail. Much more to come as well, including a story in The Guardian that Chelsea could play at Twickenham whilst Stamford Bridge is being redeveloped. More